Hello, my name is Rich Maltzman. It's great to be here in Rotterdam, virtually, and this segment is going to just be a very short introduction to a World Cafe exercise in which you get to be the star. So I'm not going to talk long, or at least I'm going to try not to talk long. So let's get right into it. I am not going to read you this entire chart. However, it is a very good summary by friend Ricardo Vargas, who's here in Rotterdam also, and thanks for the use of this slide. This shows the relationship between projects, programs, and portfolios, and what we've discovered in the last year and a half or so is that sustainability is important in projects, yes, but it really can't take hold unless it's done at the program and portfolio level. So why do we assert that we have to consider the portfolio level when we connect project management to sustainability? And even more fundamentally, why do we insist on connecting project management to sustainability? Well, to do that, we're going to lean on a model coming from Stanford University, a well-respected school in the United States, and their Stanford Execution Framework, which we use with their permission, that describes the connection all the way from an organization's purpose, its ideation for that general area at the top of the screen here. Ideation is purpose, identity, and long-range intention. All the way down to the bottom in purple where you see operations. That flow from a leader's idea and the purpose and culture and everything that defines the company. When you think of Nike or KLM, you're thinking about the company at that, usually at that level. Or you're thinking about the company in terms of its operations. A flight that KLM operates would be an operation. But what connects those two, what connects purpose to operations is strategy. And the single touch point between strategy, that orange oval in the center, and operations is the portfolio, or really the family of project, program, and portfolio management. So in effect, if you think of everything above portfolio as the rubber, meaning the theory, we're the rubber hits the road being steady state operations. The rubber meets the road with you as a project manager. Before we head too far down that road and talk about project management and sustainability, let's just make sure that we're aligned on the definition of sustainability. There's a couple that we use. One is the Brundtland definition, which focuses on development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So it's kind of long-term thinking. And then from Auden Schendler, there was a book called Getting Green Done, very short, practical book on the actual application of green or sustainability in a business. And his definition is very simple. It's acting as if you'll be in business forever, making that assumption when you do your planning. And you initiate your projects, and you run your projects, and you close your projects. Once again, I'm not going to read you this entire chart. Normally we'd spend maybe 10 minutes just on this slide, but I'd like it to be a visual reminder that sustainability is quite like quality. And we've used this new word, greenality, to describe sustainability and greenness with a less clumsy word. And it's actually had some take. We've seen other people start to use it as well. What I want you to take away from this chart is hopefully the familiar appearance of Quality is Free by Philip Crosby, a book that was very popular a couple of decades ago, but which also has worked its way into standards and talks about the idea of good quality and bad quality, and bottom line, paying now or paying later for good results. And that holds true as well for sustainability, and investing upfront in good greenality is going to yield tremendous savings of the things that could go wrong, such as fines and lawsuits and cleanup, if you have a sustainability or environmental related incident. That's all I want you to take away from this chart. And you can see a connection here to quality. And you'll be working out these connections when you get into your groups. Now, you're sitting there in Rotterdam, and I'm here in the U.S., but 12 years ago or so, I was actually living in the Netherlands, and I enjoyed it very much. I got to read a book while I was there called The Discovery of Heaven by Harry Mullish. He's a great author. It's an interesting book, and it also made a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's in English for those of you who speak English. In any case, the book is broken up into 4 sections, and I'd like to focus, instead of on the book, although it is great, I'd like to focus on its table of contents of all things. Why? Because it's broken up in a way that parses out how we as project managers tend to manage our projects. The sections are the beginning of the beginning, the end of the beginning of the end, and the end of the end. As project managers, think about a bridge or a piece of software. We stop our involvement at the end of the beginning. In other words, when the software is launched, when the ribbon-cutting ceremony takes place and the bridge is handed off. It's very, very much up front in the product's overall life that we vacate the project. We would like to give you permission to move beyond the normal stopping point, at least in our thinking, and think through to the beginning of the end. That is, when the product is in its steady state, and even, heaven forbid, when the product of the project and the whatever it is, the bridge, the software package, is brought to its end of life. Thinking about those things and bringing that thinking back to the creation of the project fundamentally connects it to the strategy, the mission, vision, and value that we saw previously in the Stanford execution model, the standard Stanford execution framework. So ironically, this book from the Netherlands, although being a fantastic science fiction, fantasy type of book, is actually an interesting guide to integrating sustainability and project management. This is another slide we usually spend maybe even 15 minutes on. I'm going to just take you through it really quickly and make you aware of the fact that there is a rainbow of green. That is a spectrum of projects, some of which are green by definition, like a wind farm. Some are green in general. There's no obvious connection to sustainability. Perhaps this is a new release of insurance software. And in the middle there are projects and categories that are green by the impact of the project or green by the impact of the product of the project. And I'll just call your attention to that one briefly because it's one that is important for us. You see the coffee cup there? That's a connection to product impact in the form of K-cups. What are K-cups? In Europe, you don't have this product as prolifically as we do in the United States. There's a company called Keurig. They make a single-serve coffee maker. It brews coffees and teas. Each time you brew a K-cup, a proprietary container is left over and disposed of, and there's no recyclability element to that cup. It's not recyclable. And there are something like 13 billion of them in landfills. Huge amount. Huge problem for Keurig, which is owned by parent company Green Mountain Coffee, one which has sustainability and CSR firmly engraved in its mission, vision, and value. So there's a disconnect there in this element of sustainability. So wherever you are on the spectrum, there's this opportunity for a strong connection or a breakdown in connection with sustainability. That's the point I'd like to get across, although there's much more here. Now, here's a slide I'd like to spend a half an hour on. It's a really good graphic. It's courtesy of Gilbert Silvius, who's also here in Rotterdam. And I just want to use it to refresh your memory from eons ago, maybe 5 minutes ago, when we talked about the Stanford execution framework. And really, the highlight here is that same connection between portfolio management at the enterprise level. This is where the strategic management, the permanent organization lives, and the connection that it has at the portfolio level to projects or temporary organizations, which we are, and then filtering back through to operations, the steady state. And you can see benefits, the realization of benefits through projects, but connected back to the enterprise level. This is really a main thread of our thinking, and something I want you to keep in mind as you do the World Cafe exercise. Once again, I'm not going to read this entire slide or spend a great deal of time on it, but I wanted to show you some of the connections we've already seen and some of the connections that through crowdsourcing and working with others we've already submitted to standardization bodies like PMI, like ISO 21500, and actually seen a little bit of take and buy-in for these proposed changes, some of which are going to take place soon, some of which may be in newer editions of these standards. But if you look, you'll see that it's very important from our perspective to get this embedded in our practices standards, not just a nice to do, but something that becomes part of the frameworks that we all use. Now we're going to be going to an exercise where you'll sit at tables facilitated by individuals for a World Cafe exercise. You'll do brainstorming to find the connections between touch points in project management, for example, risk management, to sustainability, and that includes, of course, economic, social, and environmental aspects. So let's just look at one real quickly. It's kind of a teaser, and this doesn't mean that everyone should run over to the risk table because that's where all the answers are. Just one of the more obvious ones, and we can start here. First of all, risks can be negative, also called threats, or positive, called opportunities. And those threats and opportunities take shape not only in terms of what the product of the project is all about and whether or not that comes out on time, but also the steady state operation of that project and the aspects of social and environmental impact, not just economic impact. So when you think about the BP oil spill, Deepwater Horizon, Macondo well, whichever name you'd like to use, there's an example where there was a tremendous negative environmental and financial risk that was realized, and the costs there were significantly high. Had there been more thought put into environmental risk identification, none were actually identified, by the way, then there would have been a much more likely response ready for that risk. The same thing is true for an aluminum oxide spill that took place in Hungary not that long ago, and social aspects of decisions that companies make. So risk is a really ripe source for the connectivity between sustainability and project management. A lot of this has to do with how we, as project, program, and portfolio managers, envision success. Is success when a project is done and its product has been handed over? Or is success when the benefits are realized? We'd assert that it's much more the latter. This is from a very good article coming from PM Journal in October of 2012, where it talks about project success, where project success focuses on the triple constraints. Was this project on time, within budget, and to scope? But then there's product success, organizational success, and we would assert sustainability success, which takes a full-fledged holistic view, expands the consideration beyond time, scope, and budget to consider the product, the full set of stakeholders, the longer-term view, and how the project and program fit into the overall portfolio. With that kind of view, you will do a much better job of identifying risks, of procuring, and generally meeting organizational goals at the strategic level, which is really what we're all about, going back to that rubber meets the road idea. So here are the logistics. We do not know at this point. This is being recorded near Boston, Massachusetts, after all, well before the session actually takes place. So we don't know how many people are going to sit down for this World Cafe. But if we have a kind of a moderate attendance of 51 people, let's say, to 72, with a group of, say, 10-ish people at each table, perhaps we could have 6 tables, each with a facilitator, each talking about these touch points: integration, risk, procurement, stakeholders, ethics, and so forth. And we can talk at each table, identifying, brainstorming the ways in which those aspects of a project, and of course project management, are impacted by sustainability and vice versa. So we've talked about risk. Well, when it comes to ethics and professional responsibility, what kinds of ideas can the team brainstorm at each of these tables? Now, as far as the entire World Cafe process, that's going to be explained to you by a facilitator there in Rotterdam. So enjoy this. We hope it's a really creative and innovative dialogue. Your facilitator will provide you with a sheet like this that gives you some tips to get started. I'll just go through this really quickly. For each of the tables, for example, at procurement, think about what kinds of CSR considerations get ignored and why, and what happens if they are ignored, what happens to the overall project and the interests of the enterprise. And in fact, the tips might be: think about the resulting operations, the steady state, the Harry Mullish end of the end type viewpoint, and what happens when you don't feed back ideas from the project steady state, from even the disposal of the project's product, back into the design, like the Keurig example. Think about that as you discuss this. One other thing, keep in mind the Stanford University and Gilbert Sylvius idea about the portfolio and strategy level. Move up, promote yourself up from the project level to the strategy and portfolio program level to think about the project in its larger context and more connected to statements that the company might be making, the organization might be making about CSR. So good luck, have fun, be very innovative and creative here, and hope you enjoy this. Tot ziens, dag!